Yeah, but they didn't have to start eating until after the speech. We got to roll. Okay. Yeah. Let me let you.
Okay. Okay, seats everybody, please. Please move expeditiously to your seats. Okay, may I have your attention, please? They're serving lobster next door, so it's your last chance to get up. Okay, welcome everybody to lunch. We need to get going. We're doing things a little differently today. We'll have our speaker, and then we will enjoy lunch together, but appreciate your patience and participation here. It's my honor to introduce General Anthony Ierardi. He's the G8 of the Army. He's out here somewhere. I forget where he was sitting, but he's down here somewhere. There he is, right there. I used to be the N8, and in the old days, the G8 was right below the N8, and I had a big 80-pound tail hook, and whenever I got ready to take money away from the Army, I just drop it on the deck, and General Melcher would come running up and stop me from doing it. So I don't think they do that anymore, but if you hear a tail hook dropping on your overhead there, General, it's probably the Navy guy taking money from you, so we don't do that. But he's had a distinguished career. He was the Deputy Commanding General of 3 Corps and the Commanding General of the 1st Cav down in Fort Hood. And I will commend his bio to you in the program. Probably one thing, we served together in Desert Storm. I think I saw you when I was at 15,000 feet looking down in my trusty intruder. I think I saw you guys motoring around down there in the dust. Well, it was my pleasure to drop a few 100,000 pounds of bombs for you. And the other piece of distinguishing information I put on here is he is a graduate of the United States Naval War College. So congratulations there. So without further ado, General.
Okay, I think first it's appropriate for me to say I'm from a South Philadelphia Italian family. It's okay if you eat your lunch while I speak, because I'm used to speaking over people who are eating. So please, and I'm sincere about that, feel comfortable to eat. There's not a problem, and you can have food delivered. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your Lou, for the kind introduction and affording me the opportunity to participate in this important conference today. And I'm grateful to Vice Admiral Retired Lou Crenshaw, as well as Ms. Deb Delmar and her staff, and also to Mr. Bob Spear for the orientation to speak today, and to all of you for your attendance. This is a wonderful opportunity to interact with a critically important audience whose current and future efforts will prove tremendously impactful to working through the fiscal challenges faced today and in the future by the government sector and our defense and military departments. And I applaud the efforts of everyone involved here, recognizing that this is not merely a continuing dialogue among professionals in a given field, but also a platform for training which ultimately leads to the development and better implementation of how we approach our missions. I've got a perspective I'd like to share. I will talk about the Army a bit and what we're doing in terms of balancing resources in the future. But first, I'd like to maybe offer just a bit of philosophy about stewardship and military comptrollers. I recognize and appreciate the importance of what you do as military comptrollers for your respective organizations, speaking to that military comptroller community. I first saw and gained a tremendous appreciation for this when I served as the Deputy CG, Deputy Commander of the Combined Security Transition Command in Afghanistan in 2008-2009. During this time of our mission at Sea-Stika in Afghanistan, we faced significant challenges in accounting for resources in the conduct of our mission to support the development of the Afghan security forces in the context of a very complicated operational environment. We spent considerable efforts to address these challenges, as did successive teams that came behind us. And I learned a few important things. First is the value of resource managers to overall mission accomplishment. We were blessed at that time with capable comptrollers assigned from all of the services who were able to authoritatively account for the appropriations we were responsible for, and we worked hard to be able to do that. But what I came to understand was the link between the J3, the operations officer, and the comptrollers were in fact as important as any other relationship on our team. And this is most important because the mission at that time required that we be able to answer for the resources that we received and applied to operations and tasks we were accomplishing, and could be explained in terms of operational benefit and risk to our commanders and to those charged with providing oversight. As you know, proper oversight did ensue. Our procedures were improved, and as a result, accountability was enhanced. As a leader, I readily espouse the belief that our focus should always be on providing service members, our soldiers and units, with the resources necessary to accomplish and achieve success in every task, which includes ensuring the availability of proper training and providing equipment that gives our forces overmatching capabilities, and to never leave mission success in question. And I also understood at that time, and carry forward to today, the need to protect and account for our resources, to sustain the support of the American people in the missions that we're conducting. What I came to truly appreciate is that proper accounting and good stewardship of resources is indeed mission enabling and in our nation's fundamental best interest. The lessons of the past decade highlight the importance of transparency and auditability of operations. And with the prospect of a return to sequestration in fiscal year 16 and reduced budgets, it's also a practical matter that improved fiscal operations and resource accountability continue to be aggressively pursued and implemented to make the maximum use of every dollar. I'd like to transition a bit here to talk about our Army, about your Army, and the challenges and opportunities that we face. Unlike during the post-World War II and post-Vietnam eras, where significant force reductions came after decreases in hostilities or global commitments, our Army today is implementing considerable force reductions amid continued high operational tempo related to a very dynamic international security environment. We continue to reduce the size of the force from wartime high-end strengths in 2011 down to new lower programmed levels in 2018. In the active Army, we're reducing and on the way from 570,000 soldiers in 2011 down to approximately 450,000 soldiers in 2018. And at the end of this fiscal year, the active Army will sit at about 490,000 soldiers on our way down. In the Army National Guard, we will reduce from wartime highs of 358,000 down to 335,000. And in the United States Army Reserve, will reduce from 205,000 down to 195,000, again, all by the end of fiscal year 18. The downsizing of the total Army, however, is occurring against the backdrop of a sustained high rate of operational tempo. The Army has undertaken diverse missions, such as deploying forces to Eastern Europe to reassure allies in support of their defense. The Army supported humanitarian efforts in West Africa to combat the effects of the Ebola virus outbreak this past year. The Army is training forces in the Middle East to counter the effects of ISIS aggression. And the Army is supporting military-to-military engagements in the Pacific to strengthen our partnership and alliances. And we, of course, are training to remain ready to respond in defense of our homeland if ever necessary. The physical landscape of the Army footprint around the world is also changing. Reductions in force structure and planned force reductions will no longer allow the Army to retain permanently based footprints and established locations in many places around the world. We've implemented aggressively a regionally aligned forces concept to provide combatant commanders with tailored, trained, responsive, and available forces and JTF-capable headquarters. Regionally aligned forces are trained for a full spectrum of operations, and they prepare to the specific requirements of regions and are being employed in this fashion today. And we are shifting to the use of rotational forces appropriately to meet mission requirements. And these include missions that range from positions in Europe to Korea, sure enough in the Middle East and in the Pacific, as I've noted, with division headquarter capability as well as brigade combat teams and enabling forces to ensure that our missions are properly supported regionally. But it's not sufficient for us just to be ready for today's mission. We must look to the future. The Army recently published an Army operating concept. And this was introduced in October of last year to set the condition to succeed in the future, and by the name of this document, to win in a complex world. This concept, this Army operational concept, lays the foundation for adaptations the Army must make to effectively operate in the future joint operating environment, an intensely complex environment where enemies and adversaries will employ traditional, unconventional, and hybrid strategies to gain strategic and operational advantages. This concept emphasizes that the Army is, in effect, expeditionary. It's an Army with the capacity to move rapidly, to move more swiftly than our adversaries can respond. And the Army operating concept requires the Army to be organized, trained, and equipped to excel in joint, combined arms maneuver. We stress the necessity for improved interoperability between our own services and coalition partners. And the Army operating concept requires forces to not simply move on the battlefield, but must effectively integrate the use of mobility, protection, and lethality to win or achieve overmatch against a range of threats. Indelibly linked to being able to execute joint combined arms maneuver is having interoperable systems across the services or with allies and coalition partners so that forces are able to share information and develop common operational views about the operational and tactical problems that we face. In developing a new Army force structure that is optimized to execute the Army operating concept, the Army identified 20 warfighting challenges. The evaluation of these challenges will be used as a basis to improve the combat effectiveness of the current and future force, and it will guide our modernization efforts. Starting early next year, the Army will implement Army warfighting assessment exercises to evaluate interim solutions for overcoming 20 named warfighting challenges and lead to enduring efforts to develop the future force. Those challenges include, among others, how we exercise mission command, how we ensure interoperability to operate in joint, interagency, intergovernmental, and multinational efforts in those kinds of environments, developing agile and adaptive leaders, setting the theaters of operation and sustaining operations and maintaining freedom of movement, and finally, among others, conducting air-ground reconnaissance. The exercises I described will be used to test concepts and capabilities and will include joint and multinational participation. Now, I'll bring this back to my current responsibility as the Army G8. I'm responsible to the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff to develop a program that maps resources to the future requirements of the Army and to develop and sustain an equipment modernization program. And this is an important and challenging task these days in the context of fiscal reductions and the increased Army requirements today and in the future. Right now, the Army is balancing end strength, current force readiness, and modernization. Personnel costs related to end strength are relatively fixed at approximately 50% of our program and are somewhat insensitive to budget reductions. Pressure, therefore, is felt acutely in readiness and modernization accounts. And we must continue to prioritize resources on the readiness of our units, given the range of operational missions and requirements today on the horizon. As such, the Army is experiencing continued pressure in our modernization accounts relative to other key program priorities. and we must continue to carefully evaluate, assess, and adapt our equipping modernization strategy to meet these requirements in the current fiscal environment. I'd like to highlight some tenets of our equipping strategy. First, we want to enhance the soldier for broad mission, joint mission support by highlighting, emphasizing, and indeed prioritizing improved lethality, protection, mobility, and situational awareness for our soldiers and for our units. We want to enable mission command, or as some of you may remember it, command and control, by implementing the use of a robust, tailorable, scalable, and expeditionary network. We want to remain prepared for joint combined arms maneuver by reducing logistics footprints and increasing deployability, lethality, mobility, and by optimizing survivability. And our ongoing modernization efforts must address current and emerging threats in an increasingly sophisticated environment. And we must maintain an ability to contend with such diverse threats as cyber attacks, electronic warfare, unmanned systems, chemical and biological agents, and air and missile threats. Our programmatic strategy for equipping the force is based on a reality that investments have declined approximately 25 to 30% since fiscal year 12. As a result, we aim to maintain a balance as best possible in the face of continued downward pressure on our budget, our Army's budget in general, and specifically in our modernization counts. We intend to preserve our investment in science and technology to develop and mature next-generation enabling technologies in support of the Army in complex environments of the future. We will continue to incrementally modernize and upgrade our current capabilities. For the most part, our Army's current combat fleets provide distinct advantages over our adversaries. They do provide distinct advantages over our adversaries. We will continue to improve and leverage our existing fleets by enhancing their current capabilities. We must optimize procurement capacity and maintain an industrial base that is capable of not only supplying the combat equipment presently in demand, but that has the capacity to expand to support emerging needs. And even in a time of reduced budgets, the Army must have provisions to protect against the loss of critical, skilled labor workforce whose contributions would take years to replicate, if not maintained. We will have modest, selected investments in new capabilities, but important investments until later when budgets are more stable. And I'll highlight just a few. Our AMPV, our Armored Mobility Protective Vehicle, provides improved underbelly and ballistic protection and survivability. It provides improved powertrain and electrical power and will provide greater protection for our units in our Armored Brigade combat teams. We're improving our Paladin systems, our tactical indirect fire systems, in the Paladin Integrated Management upgrade. And we're looking out to the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, addressing force protection, performance, and payload limitations in the current Humvee fleet, and providing greater off-road mobility and greater protection compared to the current set of MATV MRAPs. In terms of aviation, we look to the future, developing a future vertical lift aircraft that creates commonality in airframe design, promotes scalable technology in different categories of airframes, and provides increased power and efficiency. We look to improve our engines in the improved turbine engine program to increase performance, reliability, and maintainability of our aviation fleets. To reduce maintenance costs across the board, the Army will divest equipment as new capabilities come on board and as our force structure continues to draw down. With the possible return of sequestration level budget caps in fiscal year 16, Army equipment modernization portfolios may sustain or faces significant risks. And those risks include fewer mitigation options, greater aging fleets, and eroding overmatch in general. And we will be very attentive to ensure that our modernization efforts continue to seek to provide our soldiers the greatest advantage possible in the conduct of their missions. In conclusion, it really comes back to our service members, speaking to the joint community here, back to our soldiers and their families, that we are here today gathered to discuss how we do our particular business in a more effective way, stewarding the resources of our respective departments to enable our missions. But ultimately, it's about our soldiers and getting our soldiers on the ground, as I've described, deployed in many locations today and in the future, undeniably, will be needed to be ready to respond as necessary to have what they need to accomplish their missions. And that's what we want to do, is to ensure that we're able to give them what they need. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today, for allowing me to share a few minutes with you. And I look forward to answering a few questions if you have them. Thank you. Of course, it's lunchtime. The more questions you ask, the less lunch you may get. Okay, I'm going to get off easy here. Thanks again. It's great to see everybody, and I look forward to meeting you all in the conduct of our business here. Ma'am, thank you very
so
much.
sir.
Army strong.
Okay, my thanks to everyone for their cooperation in getting seated quickly and letting the general speak. Now let's have lunch, and then we'll conduct business in about 25 minutes. Thank you.